everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Jayson.
And we are father
and son.
And what are we tackling this time, Jayson?
We're tackling Back to the Future series.
So we're doing the entire trilogy?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So this is not the first time you've seen at least the first movie, but I think it had been long enough that it might as well have been.
And the rest of the series, of the trilogy.
But like, had you seen them before?
Yeah, I had seen all of them.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember. I wasn't sure if you'd only seen the first one.
Yeah. Like, I remembered parts of the movies.
Because you told me you wanted to do this because you couldn't remember a lot of details.
Yeah.
And then when we started in on one, you seemed to remember a lot of things about the opening, but then after that, you had no idea where things were going.
Yeah.
So what did you remember from 2 and 3? Like, did you remember that we go to the future? Did you remember the Old West?
Yeah, so for 2, all I remembered was the future with the Beat It thing, and I wanted a Pepsi in that whole scene.
Yeah.
But that was like the
Pepsi perfect!
But that was like the only thing that I remembered about
Oh,
2.
interesting. Was that just because you're a Michael Jackson fan?
Probably. The other thing that I liked about...
Did you remember Michael Jackson arguing with Ronald Reagan about the specials and stuff?
Yeah.
Or no, actually that's not who he argues with, but Ronald Reagan's in there too, but yeah. You must have the special!
And, it's really funny. And then in 3, I remember the train scene, kind of.
Oh, sure, yeah. I can see why that would be the thing that stuck with you. So I showed Jayson the first Back to the Future movie years ago when my buddy Tim Lyons got married, because Tim and his wife had a Back to the Future themed wedding. And my family, except for Jayson, was out of town, and so I took Jayson with me, and I was in the wedding party, and everybody had to dress up as different characters from Back to the Future. So I was one of the groomsmen, and I had to be one of 2 Doc Browns. There were 2 of us. I was the Doc Brown from the Old West, I think, or was I no, I was the 50s Doc Brown. And I had watches all up and down my arm, and it was awesome. And I had a big white wig.
Yeah, I remember that.
I wore the Frickadoo wig from Spawn Year.
Oh.
And then there was another guy who, or was there another? It's been years now. I'm trying to remember if there was another Doc Brown. Now that I'm saying that, I think there may have only been me, but I know there were 2 Martys. Because I tried to stay in character most of the time, and so during the wedding reception, I would run around and try to keep the 2 Martys from meeting, so that they wouldn't destroy the space-time continuum. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And so I wanted to make sure that Jayson knew something about the series, because he was going to get to see a DeLorean that day. Tim and Gloria went all out. They just pulled out all the stops. It was just the coolest thing. And when we got there to take wedding photos, we got to get in the DeLorean and take pictures around it, and it was in front of a square that looked a lot like Hill Valley, that had a really similar clock tower and everything. And we got to take pictures all around there, and Jayson was just in heaven. He thought it was the coolest thing, and I'm really glad that I had a chance to show you that movie, or you'd have no idea what we were looking at, and it wouldn't have been such a big deal to you.
Did everyone have to dress up?
Everybody that was in the wedding parties did. Yeah, we had a Strickland. We had a guy who was about that age, who was bald and had a real stern kind of affect, and I don't think he was in character. I think that was just that guy. I think they knew Principal Strickland and invited him to that wedding. It was fantastic. But yeah, we had, nearly every major character in some way or another we had in the wedding party. And I think we had a Biff, and it was cool. But that morning I showed you Back to the Future, and when we get to the end of that movie, and I tell this story all the time because it's so great. We get to the end, and Jayson is just enamored with this movie the entire time. He's just totally sucked in. We get to the end, and we get to the credits, and he looks at me and he goes, "You mean it turns into an airplane?" And so when we saw it, you were so excited to get to see the DeLorean, and then after we took pictures and everything, and we were leaving, we hung around pretty close to the end, so we actually got passed on the street by the DeLorean, and so you got to see it drive, and you were freaking out. You're looking out the window, and you're like, "There it is! It's driving!" I think you thought it was going to take off. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the actual series.
I thought it would turn into an airplane.
Yeah, I think you probably thought that. I think you thought it was gonna raise up, and because I think you thought it had a hover conversion. It had no hover conversion. So let's go ahead and get into the actual movies and find out how Jayson feels about these now. So let me just start off by asking: would you consider this one of your favorite series of movies at this point, or is it just fine?
It's pretty good. I don't know. It's probably one of my favorites. I don't know if Matrix is better than it or not.
I think you really like The Matrix. Yep.
Yeah. I'd have to think about that. Like, which one is better, Matrix
So
or Back to the Future?
this isn't quite like a Star Trek place or anything.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you had fun with it.
Mm-hmm. Other series are better, of course, but it's not, like, really bad or anything.
Well, I have a bunch of stuff I want to ask you. Why don't we just go ahead and get right into... usually we start with your favorite and least favorite things, but since we're doing 3 movies, why don't we start with favorite and least favorite movie?
Okay.
Let's go to that place first.
My favorite movie was Part 3.
Yeah?
Because I really liked how they thought, like, the Old West would be.
You like that kind of idealized Old West?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's intentionally a very movie Old West. Just like the 50s was, too.
Yeah.
Like, they're not remotely trying for realism there.
Yeah, because the Old West wouldn't have clocks, I don't think.
No, they have clocks.
I mean, they would have clocks, but...
Jayson. They wouldn't have clocks. Yeah, no. I don't think the size of the clocks is the issue.
Well, no, that's not the issue. But like, I don't get how he finds all the materials to make all his stuff. And
I see what you're saying. No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Especially in as short of a time as he puts it together.
Yeah.
You mean putting together
2 days.
You mean putting together his blacksmith shop and all that?
Yeah.
I'm fuzzy on that. Was he only there for 2 days?
I think.
Because your mom kept saying that while we were watching it, and I need to go back and look at the timeline because I don't remember it being that short.
Yeah, I don't really know.
If he shows up only 48 hours after he got there, that's ridiculous that he was able to put all that together. I should have looked that up ahead of time. I forgot we had that kind of disagreement. But anyway.
And I just like how it's the last movie, so like you can see how everything has like kind of evolved. And also just
in what way? What do you mean?
Like how he always does the same thing and stuff like that. We see the same thing for the 3rd time, but it's in the Old West this time.
So you like that we're ending with the furthest in the past that we go?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought that was a smart choice, too.
And...
No, that's a really cool point, Jayson. I've never thought about it exactly like that. That, like, you 3 times does a pattern make, right? So you already in the second movie, you're going, wait a minute, I've seen this scene before, and I've seen this scene before. Why do we keep repeating ourselves?
That's one of my favorite things.
And now it's clearly very intentional. And so when you get to that 3rd movie and we start repeating something, and even there's a couple things that only happen in 2 that we repeat then in 3, like Wild Gunman.
Yeah.
And so now that we're seeing that this is very much a pattern, through the trilogy, you're saying that there's an evolution of that going kind of backwards, getting then into the past. We keep doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really fun.
Yeah.
Yep. So what else? Real quick, what else did you really like about 3?
Well, I liked how all the characters are like, they're different people, but they're played by the same actors.
Which we do in the future too.
Yeah, and we do that in the 50s.
Yeah, but it's in the 50s though, it's younger versions of all of our characters. I mean, in the future, some of our actors are playing their descendants rather than their ancestors, and now we're going to ancestors.
Yeah.
And what I think is cool about that, I like that a lot too, is that you get to see actors really stretching their legs playing characters that aren't as much like their counterparts because in the future it's a lot of like really exaggerated versions kind of characters that you had already. But like even though Buford Tannen is still the bad guy, he's not Biff Tannen. I mean, he's a different character.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest departure is Seamus, who's playing like this really wise version of a McFly, who's like what you might imagine Marty McFly when he gets to the end of 3 and makes the right call at the stoplight and doesn't mess up his hands and is still able to play guitar. When that guy becomes elderly, you could imagine maybe that's what he would be like when he's like old and wise.
Yeah.
Not that Seamus is old, but just like he's lived a little, he's got a little bit of world weariness, and that guy always makes the right decision and has a really good moral center. I loved getting to see Michael J. Fox play that.
Yeah. But yeah, I just overall like 3. My favorite part in 3 is the train scene, cause I remembered some of it, but still just seeing like the train like pushing the car.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, it's really iconic. So you like just the stunt work and everything there.
Yeah.
It all looks really good.
Yeah.
You like the way the hoverboard's used and.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that in my notes. I really like the whole thing with like the skateboard, and then it's a hoverboard and 2, and then they use the hoverboard again. And
yeah, obviously one of the things that's great about Back to the Future is all the setup and payoff. This is one of the things that Back to the Future fans always go back and point to is just the attention to really intricate detail. That has such a good sense of its own continuity and of its own iconography and props and stuff, and things are always coming back and changing subtly based on things that change in the timeline, like the Lone Pine versus the Twin Pine Mall, for example. And there's other examples later on.
Oh, yeah.
I love that the ravine has 3 different names by the end of that movie. You have Clayton Shonash Ravine, and then when you get to the end, it's Eastwood Ravine. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. But one of the things that's also great tied into all that is how resourceful our characters end up being with, and this is part of the setup and payoff, with stuff that they've been accumulating throughout. And so we don't forget we have the hoverboard. We introduce it again at the beginning of 3. Oh yeah, don't forget to put this in the DeLorean. And then of course we're going to use that somewhere. It's going to pay off at some point. And we do that in a really creative way, I think.
Yeah. And then he smashes the DeLorean, and he's like, well, Doc, I smashed it for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was a little bit convenient, wasn't it? But I mean, not too convenient, because like they're on a train track. I guess it was a little convenient that the train happened to be running right then. But I mean, yeah, they needed that car destroyed stat if they were gonna prevent anybody from finding out anything about it. They certainly needed that hoverboard to not be around anymore.
Yeah, but they kept it. I thought.
Does he get the hoverboard out of the destroyed car?
I
Or
don't
does it
know.
also get destroyed? I guess I'm not sure.
It might also.
He's not walking around with it at the end.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it also got destroyed. I think they're ambiguous about that, right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Because we see the ruins of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we hang on to the hoverboard.
Yeah, and also.
The cartoon show does.
Yeah. And
He's still got it in the cartoon show.
I want to watch that with you.
Oh, great. We're going to do a video on that?
Sure. And Bill Nye.
Awesome. And Bill Nye.
And
Okay,
then-
so, do you want to go to least favorite movie?
Yeah, sure.
Now, when we go to least favorite, is it by much? Is there a movie in this franchise that you think is, like, is way lesser quality than the other 3? Or was it just, I had to pick favorite or least favorite, so this is my least favorite, but it's still pretty good?
I think, like, all of these movies are good, but I still wanted to do a least favorite movie because there was one that was pretty good, but it was still a little bit eh.
Is it 2?
It's 2.
Oh no, what don't you like about 2? Oh, so you're one of those people, huh?
No. Well,
So,
here's the thing.
real quick, I've always loved 2. I have giant issues with the initial setup with the premise, and we'll talk about that. And I've done a whole video on that with Brandon in the past, so I won't spend the whole time talking about that.
Past.
But in the past, right? But when I was growing up, I didn't get to watch 2 very often. I think I saw it one time. And my mom loved 3, but it was the only one she ever put in. I think for a while it was the only one we owned. She just put in 3 constantly. And after a while, I started remembering the end of 2 differently because we only ever watched 3. And like I couldn't remember how that movie even worked out. My mom thought that 2 was too dark and scary and depressing, and didn't like to watch it. I think she just didn't care for the alternate dystopian present of 1985 where Biff takes over, and we didn't get to watch it. And so I think that has increased my love for 2, because now that I can actually go back and look at it, I see all the stuff that I didn't get to watch when I was a kid that I kind of missed. But I still think it's
And it came out in your favorite
great.
year.
89?
Yeah.
Well, that's neither here nor there, but sure. I actually had forgotten that until you just said that, but yeah. 89 was a crazy year for movies, man. Like, Batman came out that year, obviously, but then that's also the year that I think the last Indiana Jones movie came out that year.
And Star Trek 5?
Star Trek 5 was that year, yeah, that's right. Very good.
But, yeah, so what I don't like about 2... is the alternate 85.
Okay, what's your issue with it?
So, I kind of just don't... I'm not a big fan of Biff.
Well, sure.
And especially old Biff.
Yeah.
Like...
But old Biff's not even hardly in that part.
Right, but it's not just... But I like younger Biff.
Yeah.
I don't really like,
you like
85.
Biff from the 50s?
Yeah, I don't really like 85 Biff.
Okay, so you must have loved that third act then.
Yeah.
When, like, the wrestling for the almanac and all that.
Yeah. But...
So you like the third act of 3 a lot, of 2 a lot.
I like the first part with the future, and I like the... But...
Because I remember while we were watching it, you just kept constantly commenting on how clever it was.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, we're going to see this part again, and, like, I remember you thinking that was really cool.
Yeah, and then at the end, when they do the whole... They go back to 55, I like that part.
Yeah.
It's not as good as the first part, but I think it's just that second part that if I want to pick a least favorite, it would probably be
that part. By the time you get to the easy way, that's when you're kind of done.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean that's fair. I love how exaggerated and over the top and kind of Escape from New York that whole section is. It's like as a kid, I wonder if you'll appreciate it more as you get older, because as a kid that stuff was really oppressive to me, and as I got older I started to see the absurdity and the tongue-in-cheekness of it, and how they're having just as much fun with that section as they are the stuff in the future. And in fact, I won't talk too much behind the scenes stuff, but Galen Zemeckis, writer-director, did not like having to do the future stuff. They never wanted to take it to the future. They just thought that would be that would be kind of a fun surprise ending for the first movie. They didn't know they were going to make a sequel, because there was no sense while they were making this that it was going to be this big phenomenon, and then it was huge, and so they made another one, and they're like, well, crap, we're stuck with this ending where we go to the future, and it's such a half-baked idea that like there's some problem with your kids. You've got to go to the future to fix the future, and like even though you're not supposed to change too much of the timeline, your kid went to jail in the future, so we got to go change that, even though the future hasn't been written yet. So it's like Doc Brown, for some reason, has to learn the lesson of your future is whatever you make it, and like to some degree, I kind of get that, the idea that it's not written in stone, that he through his adventures has to learn that, and it's a good character arc. But the idea that he has to go to the future before he decides that like trying to change the future doesn't make sense. I don't know. I just always thought that was a really strange idea. That you would even think to do that, because if you're not supposed to know too much about your future, why would you go there and then try to change things about it and then come back and try to live your life and expect that things in the future would work out exactly the way, especially when you've already been back in time and you know you can change things in the past. I guess the point I'm making is when you go to the 50s and you know you can change things, when you come back, you can notice subtle changes, and he knows that some things have been changed, like with Marty's parents and stuff. Doc Brown has got to know that just living his life is going to is going to alter things from the future, especially if he's been to the future and seen it happen, right? So it was a really half-baked idea in the first place. And then it's even worse when you consider, and I still stand by this, I made this case years ago, and I've heard some rebuttals of this, but nothing has convinced me that I'm wrong about it. That if you take a person out of the timeline, and then you go to the future should be altered where you have a future that is changed by that person not being there. It doesn't make any sense. Do you see what I'm saying? So Marty McFly takes himself out of 1985, out of that that timeline, goes to the future, and he's there. Like his older self is there, but he's not in 1985 to have grown up.
Yeah.
So why would he even be there?
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
So how are there two of them? At that point, there shouldn't be two of them. For the exact same reason that there are two when you go back in time, because there was one in that timeline. And in the same movie, we're really consistent with how the time travel works, except for in the future. Because we made the mistake of setting up this half-baked thing at the end of the first one, and then decided to run with it with the second one. So when we get back to the 50s, Doc Brown says, there are two of me here and there are two of you here. Okay, then why are there two of you in the future when you took yourself out of the timeline?
Yeah. I never thought about that.
So that whole first act...
There's no way you can, actually say that is not true. And
I don't see how, yeah.
Unless the time machine has weird powers or something. Or maybe... No, because it would change... The future would change once he went back to the future. Or once he went back to the past.
Yeah.
But while he's in the future, yeah.
Like, why is his 47-year-old self there?
Yeah. I mean, it might be because of the things that happen, he goes back to 85, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that thought too, where there's some eventuality where he's in the future, he's gone back.
Yeah.
And then that would be a different timeline. I guess that's the only way that would make sense. But then that ends up being a timeline we would never see because old Biff changes it when he goes back, right? Anyway, so this is all like topsy-turvy, crazy, loopy. Does it break your brain thinking about it? Because, I mean, I spent years writing about, time travel fiction and trying to get my head around this stuff.
Yeah. It's weird.
Do you find it difficult to figure out?
Kind of.
I mean, that whole first act ends up playing as just a conceit to make the rest of the movie work. Like, the future stuff is fun, but ultimately, it's not the story, it's not important, it's kind of just a silly adventure so that we can get Biff, the old Biff, that almanac, and send him back to 55. That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
It's just that conceit. But anyway. So you just don't like 2 because that middle part's too dark?
Yeah. It's just...
Is it that it's too dark, or is that it's just...
It's also just too weird.
You think it's weirder even than the future stuff?
Probably. Because we do the future stuff a lot in things.
Yeah.
At least after Back to the Future. Too.
What are your favorite things in the future? Do you remember any of the crazy details? Do you remember Jaws 19?
Oh, yeah. I heard
Shark still looks fake.
Except it doesn't. And,
oh, no, it doesn't. That big blue holographic shark, you think that looked just like a realistic shark?
Kind of.
That's what. Okay, Jason thinks that's what sharks look like. Okay.
Well, no, but it felt like Marty thought that.
Anyway.
Cause he went like
Oh, I see what you're saying. He thought it was real because it was coming at him, not that it looked like a realistic shark. You see the distinction.
Yeah.
But anyway, were there other things in the future that you thought were cool?
Well, I liked the whole like holographic, like not holographic, like the TVs of the people.
Yeah.
And they're like arguing with.
You
each
just like
other.
the '80s bar.
Yeah. Well, and that's like kind of.
It's one of those nostalgic places.
Mhm. It literally is.
They predicted that hard, right? That we would be by that point like obsessed with the '80s. But if you think about it, we had that with the '50s in the '80s.
Yeah.
So we think of selling stuff on nostalgia as a new thing, but it's not. I mean, we've been doing that throughout the 20th century.
Yeah.
Up until now.
I just thought of another category that I didn't put down.
Yeah. What's that?
Favorite timeline.
I figured that would probably just be baked into your favorite movie, but yes, we can totally talk about that.
Yeah. So.
Real quick before we go there, though, you know one of my favorite future things is your jacket is now dry.
I forgot about that.
And also Doc Brown saying pardon the disguise, and then he pulls off the plastic thing, and he looks exactly the same. It's amazing. Anyway, so your favorite timeline is?
Oh no.
The 1950s?
Probably.
See,
it's like
is
probably
it
like
1885 because that's your favorite movie.
It's probably number 155, and then number 2 is like 2015, and then number 3 is 85. Probably like my top 3.
Okay, but that's weird because you said your favorite movie was the one where we go to the Old West,
right?
and that
But
time period isn't even in your top 3, and there's only 4 time periods. You put 1985 as your third?
It's, but I don't like the part 3 because of the timeline.
Oh,
well,
okay.
I mean, I like that we are in that timeline, but I don't.
But that doesn't make it.
That doesn't make it my favorite timeline.
I love how your 4th timeline, even with 85 being present day.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting, though, how years later, and obviously you were born in 2010, and you didn't experience the 80s or even the 90s, which still breaks my head. But isn't it interesting how Back to the Future kind of watches now like a period piece?
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't feel like the present. It feels like, obviously, the past, and then jumping into, an alternate future because we're now past 2015. And the real 2015 with all the Back to the Future stuff that was going on that year was really fun. But I digress. But it's interesting because when you go back and look at this now, 85 feels almost as exaggerated as the rest of it. Like it's a movie present day from then. And so it feels as almost exaggerated and even idealized as the rest of its time periods. And that was the time that it was made in. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's so timeless, is that it's almost as absurd in the stuff in the present day.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel realistic anywhere, which really helps it to stand the test of time.
And it doesn't. And there's not like one movie that is actually set in 85. Like.
Well, I mean, the first act of one.
Right. But there.
Or the first half of the first act of one.
Yeah. Like that's like the main one, but we don't do.
I guess
one.
if I had to break it down, I'm actually not sure if the first act plot point for one. Do you know how the 3-act structure works? That you have a plot point at the end of your first act, which kind of is usually the big giant break in status quo. Your break in status quo can happen kind of earlier, but it's like the major plot point that sets up the whole idea. And then your second act is confrontation, and then there's a big plot point at the end of that, and then your third act is the climax. And so I don't know if the first act plot point for Back to the Future is the initial time travel, or if it's actually, I think it's actually Marty getting hit in the head and Lorraine falling in love with him. I think that's actually the first act plot point of 1.
Yeah.
Or I should say climax. I should say resolution. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Should we go to? Oh yeah. One of my. So I have, like, a side note.
Side note.
I wish 2015 would actually be that way.
Do you?
Yeah, probably.
You wish we had flying cars?
Yeah.
I love how it didn't fix any of the problems with traffic, though. I like how it seems just as dangerous, and you have just as many like traffic jams and stuff.
Yeah.
In the sky, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a lot of the reason we haven't really tried that.
Yeah.
I like it when he says the skyway is jammed.
So
you wish that that when you were 5, you were actually, isn't that crazy? My son would have been 5 during 2015, and Back to the Future is 2015. So when you're 5 years old, everybody's got power laces, and all the kids are walking around with their pockets out. Because that's what the kids are doing now. And you'd have hoverboards. That's probably the one big thing I wish we had.
Yeah. But I don't know if that... Would that actually, like, make it so that you don't fall off? Would that, like, help your balance with skateboards?
That's actually a really good question.
Well, they have
sure.
They have the little lace.
Yeah.
That you put your foot into.
Well, that's true. You don't have those with regular skateboards.
Yeah. But I don't know if it would actually help.
And the Pitbull has even bigger ones, it looked like.
Yeah. Because it's only for, like, big people.
Yeah. And actually, you'd have some of the same... you'd have some of the same issues with the same drawbacks, I think, with hoverboards that you do with regular skateboards. I don't think you could use a hoverboard in the rain either, just like you can't a skateboard. You know why? Because hoverboards don't work on water unless you got power.
Oh yeah, and another thing about the future.
Yeah.
McFly.
McFly. I was monitoring that scan that you just had.
Best supporting.
Read my facts.
I don't think that would be my best supporting character.
That scene is amazing, though.
Yeah.
It's so good. Marty's like, it was a sting operation. We're talking about the scene where he gets fired, and then he has fax machines all over his house because they did not predict the internet.
Yeah.
This is a future with no internet.
That is so weird. And then in 3,
which is also weird because it's only like 6 or 7 years before we get the internet.
Yeah.
Actually, it's like 5. That movie comes out in '89. We start we start getting some commercial internet as early as '94.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit earlier than that.
And then in 3, her, Jennifer has one of the "you're fired" things.
And it's erased.
Yeah.
What does it mean? It means that your future hasn't been written yet! Because when you do a Doc Brown impression, you have to just yell a lot.
Yeah.
No one has! Do you know what the first... We're talking about 1994. When we first started getting internet with phone lines. You know how the internet worked years before you were born? So we have cable internet now.
Was it a coin machine? Like,
a coin machine?
what
do you mean?
Would you like
a phone booth?
Yeah. Would you like pop in a coin and then...
That's amazing. No. I'm talking about like internet at your house. Because the only way you would get internet out in public would be at like a library or something. You wouldn't go somewhere and pay to use the internet. That's really interesting. That's not how it worked. No, it was through the phone line. So you had dial-up internet, and that meant that you weren't online all the time. Because if you were online all the time, it would tie up your phone line. And whenever somebody would call, you wouldn't actually get the phone call. because you couldn't use we're talking about landlines because this is also before cell phones, so you couldn't use the telephone if somebody was on the internet.
Oh.
And if somebody was trying to call you, you wouldn't know it. They would have to just leave a message if you had an answer machine. And so, and then when you got online, you had to wait around for a tone. And I don't know if you've ever heard that tone, but I'll play it for you at some point. What that sounded like, but it was like, and there's static. It was like, bzzz, and then you get online, and that was before cable internet. That's what it was like.
That's kind of weird.
But the first, but I was going to tell you, the first commercial, or I should say, the first web page promoting a movie was for Star Trek Generations. It was some of the first video online where you could watch the trailer in like really horrible low res. Looked like you were watching full motion video on a Sega CD or something.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's weird the technology you know a lot about because of all the research you've done on video games and then where your gaps are. That like you don't know that about how dial-up internet worked, but you know about like the Game and Watch and
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
stuff like that.
Well, but video games like didn't really. I don't really know like anything about the internet. I just know.
Sure.
I know about video games. That I don't really research like how the internet worked. I researched
You
how.
should.
I researched how
It's
computers worked in the 70s. But,
Oh, cool. So do you know anything about like the Commodore 64
no.
and stuff like that?
I don't know stuff about that.
Oh,
but,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. So before we get into your best stuff, worst stuff,
Okay.
let me ask you this big question about Back to the Future 1.
Okay.
What was it like for you? Like, I'm just wondering how much of this you appreciated and what it was like for a kid your age. Because this was the biggest kind of new thing that we hadn't really seen before in playing around with time travel, and even in like a comedy drama like this. What was it like for you watching a movie about a guy who essentially has to deal with his own mother falling in love with him?
Oh yeah. I thought that was kind of weird, but like, Lorraine is my favorite supporting character.
Oh, interesting. Throughout the franchise, or just in that movie?
Well, kind of throughout the franchise. She isn't really there in 2 and 3 that much. But
well, 2 you have the present, the alternate 85 version, who's married to Biff.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what you have there. And then in 3 she's not there at all. You have that actress playing her ancestor.
Yeah. That is her in the 55 version, which I like her better in the 55 version.
Yeah. Yeah, naturally.
But yeah, she's one of my favorite characters.
How come?
Just because of that whole thing with her, falling in love with Marty. And
yeah.
It has to basically,
and you can see why that happens.
Subplot of the movie.
Yeah, and you see when that happens.
Yeah.
Because obviously she has no idea who that is and that he's from the future.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of that, ideal, confident kid that she's looking for. And the first time around, she has to settle for George McFly. Where she doesn't, Biff's a bully, she doesn't like him, he's the only other person that's really after her. And so she goes to the Enchantment of the Sea dance with George McFly, and then eventually they get married, and she's never happy because he's this not confident, really unsure of himself kind of guy who never goes for his dreams. The only reason she falls in love with him is because it's somebody for her to save, because she hits him with a car, and that's a real cliche thing for a lot of movies. You fall in love with the person you save. What I've always liked about it with Back to the Future is that it knows it's a cliche. It kind of makes fun of that, but more than that, it's not happily ever after that. Those kinds of relationships rarely actually work out.
Yeah. But yeah. Good things and bad things I've kind of talked about. So I have 2 for both, and I've talked about 1 for both.
Okay, sure.
So I like.
You can just hit on it again.
So I like the idea of like there's a time machine that's actually made out of a car.
Yeah.
And the first thing you see, this dog is in it, and then he goes to like the past or something. I don't remember when.
No, he goes a minute in the future, and then they wait a minute, and then they catch up to him.
Yeah.
That scene is... Okay, so this is a thing I wanted to complain about. There are places where Marty is really dumbed down to look... To maybe make Doc look smarter in places, or just because they're like, we're writing a dumb kid, but he also has to, and I'm glad that he does, he also has to have some ingenuity and some resourcefulness in order for us to appreciate him as the protagonist. So he actually showcases a lot of smarts throughout a lot of the movie, but there are just these token moments where he's really dumb. Like in 3, where he can't read schematic. I'm like, really? All right. I just don't buy that Marty McFly can't read the word schematic. And then in 1, you've got that moment where he goes, after Einstein, the dog, has time traveled, he goes, oh, is it hot? No, it's cold. It's air cold. You're looking at it, and it's got ice on it. And if you expect that to be hot, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just reminded of something. I don't mean to take over, but there's a thing that I wanted to mention because I've talked about these movies before, and I noticed something this time that I never noticed before. So when I did the commentary back with Tim Lyons and Brandon years ago, there is this there's a complaint I always had that I talk about there, and I don't think I noticed this then, but I haven't gone back and listened to that commentary in a long time, so it's possible I've made this point already, but I don't think I have. You remember, Jason, when Marty has the note that he writes to tell Doc Brown from 55 to try to save himself in the future, because he's going to get shot by the Libyans? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And he and Doc says, well, no one's supposed to know too much about their own future. Of course, then the same Doc Brown eventually travels to the future to find out things about the future. But he takes the note and he rips it all to shreds, right? And then when we see him with the bulletproof vest in the future, in the present, it's because he taped up all those pieces and was able to read the note, right? Mm-hmm. And it's coming down rain, and I always thought it was ridiculous that he was able to find all those pieces and put them back together, but I remembered it wrong. I remembered him, like, throwing the pieces up in the air, and so the idea would have been in the middle of the rain he found every piece, but that's not what happens. It's really ambiguous about it. He pulls it apart, and then after that, you just see him with his hand, like, down here in his pocket or something. So I'm thinking he actually didn't throw the pieces away, he actually pocketed them. And if he held on to all the pieces, then that ending is way more believable.
Yeah. Yeah, I never... Yeah. Because I didn't actually see him put his hand in his pocket. I don't really remember what he did.
Yeah. Well, again, I think they're really ambiguous about it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe they did a quick cut so that they don't show where the pieces go. I'm wondering if maybe they're actually if maybe Christopher Lloyd did throw him in the air and they cut that out so that the ending would make more sense. But I always remembered it as he threw it in the air. That's not what happens. So anyway, I just wanted to make that point real quick because I don't know where else I'll ever be able to mention that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I like the idea of like they they have this time machine, the flux capacitor, and they just put it in this car. And I think that's like a good idea, because there's a lot of power from the car, so they can make it go into the future with a flux capacitor.
Yeah, because before, time machines had always been stationary things, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And the idea that you would need that forward momentum to make to power the thing that makes you go back or forward in time is it makes a lot of sense. But it's also just a really cool, visual thing. It's what makes Back to the Future feel like an action movie, because Back to the Future is not an action movie. I mean, it's pretty talky. It's obviously more of a comedy drama, and there are some action, points in it.
Yeah.
But it's not constant fisticuffs. It's not constant, gunplay and stuff. Some of that is in there, but that's not mostly what it is. So I think the big thing that makes people remember Back to the Future almost as if it was an action movie is that it has this really dynamic sequence in every movie, at least once, if not more, where the car is going really fast, and then you have lightning bolts everywhere, and then it time travels.
Yeah. And at first...
so it makes sense that it became as iconic as it did.
And then in the third movie, I thought they weren't time traveling at the end of 3. I thought they were going to space, because I thought
I was reminded of your airplane comment where you're like, oh, now they go to space!
Because I didn't realize that the lightning bolts came out the front.
Yeah.
And I thought those were their lasers.
Why would the lasers help you get to space?
I don't know, but they would
Sure, so if
shoot
your
all the
interpretation
lasers.
is that there's lasers, then that's why they go to space.
No, that's not why they go to space. They go to space and they have lasers and they shoot them everywhere because it's
because there's Klingons off the starboard bow?
No, because it's the end of a movie and they want you to see a cool thing. But also I really wish there was a TV show that was him going off and doing those things
At different time periods?
Yeah, at different time periods. And then there could be one where he goes to space.
I like that interpretation. I mean, it doesn't actually make sense because it's pretty clear they're time traveling. The reason he's talking about the light everywhere in the front is because he thought that was something else, and I was like, no, that happens every time you time travel. So clearly they're time traveling.
I thought that because we never see it in the front. We never see the lightning bolt up the front.
No, I think we do, but anyway.
But we usually see it on the sides or the back.
But when Marty says, "Are you going back to the future?" and he says, "No, already been there," I kind of like the interpretation that what he really means is, "I'm tired of time traveling. I'm going to go explore something else," and then he just jets off into space. But that's not what happens. So
Yeah.
that's clearly not what's happening.
Yeah. And then again,
We can find out where he really goes when we watch the cartoon show.
does that actually take place after the third?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's directly after 3, but they contrive some silly reason that or maybe they don't even contrive anything. Maybe they just have it. But they have another DeLorean, even though the DeLorean got destroyed. They build another one.
Why?
And they have, I don't know, they have both.
Also, why?
They'll have the time train and that, and they make Jules and Verne like characters.
And also, why
And Clara.
At the end, why did they have the train where he specifically asked Marty to make the time traveler thingy, time travel machine, not be a thing anymore, so that they can stop going in time? But then
He changed his mind.
But then he makes another time machine. But he says that in the second movie.
Yeah.
He's been saying that 2 movies.
You notice he's got kids now. He's had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah.
So he's changed his mind because he's decided that the future is whatever you make it, and somehow that arc leads him to, I guess it's okay to risk damaging the timeline to start time traveling again. It's too easy, and it's kind of the same. And this is a complaint that I have about these movies. It's kind of the exact same thing as the end of one, where we have a big dilemma, and then we just kind of dismiss it by waving our hand, saying it's the end of the movie, and we want to do the fun thing, right? So in one, I just over and over again, he's saying, Doc Brown, don't tell me about the future. No one's supposed to know too much about their future. Don't tell me how I die. If I die, it's my time. And then his response at the end for why he went ahead and put on the bulletproof vest is, well, I thought, what the hell? And that's exactly the same thing you get with 3. It's, well, how come you build, I mean, nobody asked this question, but it's like, how come you build a time train after you said that time travel has brought, nothing but misery? And he basically just builds a time train, waves his hand and says, what the hell? It's basically that again.
Yeah.
I guess that one I like a little bit better because and again, this is not talked about, but you would have the argument now of time travel has not brought us nothing but misery. I got my wife out of this. We had a family. We didn't ruin the timeline. I guess you actually don't have to worry about the time-space continuum that much. And the only changes that we ultimately made after we fixed, got out of that alternate dystopian present from 1985, with the exception of that, the only differences we've made in the future have been, 1985 in the present, have been positive ones, where Marty's parents have a better life, and his father is a happier guy, and he's a better person, and they live wealthier lives, even though for some reason they live in that same house. And Dave, even though he has a desk job at an office where he puts on a suit every day, he still lives with his parents. I'll never understand that.
Yeah.
But anyway, what else you got?
And then I like how he does the same things in every movie.
Yeah, give me some examples of your favorite ones of those.
Every movie he wakes up and he tells Lorraine or her, basically her, younger self.
Yeah.
That, that he woke up and he had this horrible nightmare.
Yep.
That he went and, time traveled.
We do it every time.
Every time.
My least favorite is the first time because she is using her, older, more world-weary voice just so we'll think it's the present-day Lorraine, and then as soon as the light comes on, she's the 1955 character. I hate that.
Yeah.
Where she's like, back in good old 1955. And then we turn on the light, and she's normal, and she's younger Lorraine, and she's not talking like that anymore. It's obnoxious. She never does that again, thank goodness. So what are some other ones?
And then there's one that I was like, I always saw him doing it when he walks into the town. He's like walking backwards and then like looking around.
Oh yeah,
and
the reveal of what the square looks like now.
Mhm.
With the clock tower.
And he does it in every movie.
Yep.
And then of course the Wild Gunman thing in 3.
And he's usually talking to himself, right? He's in 1955 or the future.
Bad Things.
And then of course I Hate Manure is one of those.
Oh yeah.
And we do that in
Is
1 and
that-
3. He doesn't get hit with manure in 2. He goes through a window.
I think he does go through manure.
In 2?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking
remember?
about in the future. No, I guess he does get he gets hit by manure in the third act in 1955 again, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think the old Biff does.
No, the young Biff. So his car gets ruined in exactly the same way the day after it did the first time.
And the old Biff is like, there's something very familiar about all this.
Yes, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
I think it's a cool way to get to kind of have sequelitis on purpose, which is a thing that I can't say about much other stuff, where it's like, I don't think 2 or 3 tell exactly the same story as 1. There's a lot of repeated events, and they do it on purpose, and the idea is supposed to be that, like, time it tends to repeat itself. And so that's kind of a fun idea. Again, we do it in a really exaggerated way, like everything else. And so there's a lot of movies, and my go-to is always Home Alone, the Home Alone 2 problem of we just did the exact same movie again in a different location, where we're repeating all the same stuff and hoping that either you won't notice or you'll just be enjoying getting to see what you liked about the first thing again, and we don't have any new ideas.
Except with bricks.
Except with bricks. But, exactly. But Back to the Future doesn't have that problem. It keeps repeating itself in tongue-in-cheek ways, and then...
It's kind of just making fun of that.
It's making fun of that, yeah, and having fun with it, with time travel, with, again, the history repeats idea. But then, like, 2 is a very different kind of character arc for Marty. So, I mean, it's a different movie. And 3 is actually one character arc for this character, where he is learning something about self-confidence and insecurity and not letting other people, like, dictate his life to him, that he can live on his own terms. The whole, I freak out every time somebody calls me chicken, or in the third movie, yellow or something, and he learns to overcome that and not care what other people think about him, which is related to the arc from 1. I mean, you could make the argument even that there's an arc through all 3 about the insecurities he has about his art, where he has the same thing that his father had. The one way that he is his father's son, the original George McFly, who was afraid to take risks and didn't amount to anything because he didn't make the hard calls in his life. And then Doc Brown, of course, is the 3 becomes a lot more about him. And so you finish off that character arc with Marty, but like, Marty is largely a vehicle for Doc Brown's character arc in 3, with this kind of romance arc.
Yeah. But yeah, I
I forget how I got there. I don't remember what we were talking
about. We were talking about he does the same things in all the movies.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yes. So my point overall, like, something I'm just analyzing the character arcs. Like, why was I going there? Oh yes. So the point I'm making is 2 and 3 are never exactly that first movie again. And what's interesting is 1 and 3 are kind of bookended in their structures, because they're both about the kind of main external conflict is we're stuck in a time period, we got to try to get back. And so the first movie is we don't have plutonium to do the time travel. Mm-hmm. So we need a bolt of lightning. So the whole movie is figure out how to make that happen. And then 3 is we actually have the apparatus to time travel, but we don't have his gas. And we had gas in 1955. Jayson, in 1955, I bet gas could be found in any corner drugstore, but here in 1885, it's a little hard to come by. And so that's a really fun reversal that I just thought of. That, like, this time we have what we needed in 1, but what we need is gas.
Yeah.
And so it's a similar structure, but it's a very different story. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's never the same thing again.
Yeah. And then I already talked about how I don't really like the alternate 85. And I feel like basically 2 is kind of the same way, where he can go back, but but he wants to go back into 55 on purpose.
Yeah, the difference in 2, so 1 and 3 are how do we get back to the future, and 2 is
how do we fix the future.
Yeah, exactly. Where, like, we ruined the timeline. It's that thing we keep being afraid that we'll do. We've actually done it.
Yeah.
Or rather, Biff did, but it was Marty's fault.
Yeah.
That made that happen. So isn't that kind of cool that 1 and 3 are bookended in their formulas, and then 2 being the middle movie, the kind of the middle child, is a total departure. It's a completely different kind of problem.
Yeah.
It's the crazy one, and just like Empire Strikes Back and a lot of good second movies, it's the darkest one.
Yeah. Do you think Empire Strikes Back is the darkest one?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I feel like 3 is kind of the dark.
You think Return of the Jedi is darker than Empire?
I think it's been a while.
Where Luke gets his arm cut off, and Han Solo gets trapped in carbonite.
Okay, but they do that kind of a silly way.
Name something in Return of the Jedi that is darker than either of those things. And that has the Ewoks, and Empire doesn't. Oh, and Empire also opens with one of our heroes almost freezing alive, and having to use the coat of his tauntaun for warmth after he murders it, like 5 minutes into the movie. Or kills it. I should say murder.
And she has to wear silly clothes.
Oh, okay. So you're just saying Slave Leia makes Return of the Jedi the darkest movie? Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Slave Leia makes that the darkest movie. We gotta do the Star Wars movies now that you said that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I mean, there's a point to be made there that's as dark as some of the stuff in Empire.
Yeah.
And you think, like her choking him to death?
Yeah.
With her chains?
And at the end, with, he has to make, like, a big, like, choice.
Well, sure.
And, yeah.
See,
it's kind of dark.
See, the death of Vader and everything?
Yeah.
Makes it really dark, too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not, like, really dark.
Alright.
I don't know.
Anyway. We're way off course now. Now we're talking about Star Wars.
We're not talking about Back to the Future anymore.
No.
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more
Are we
bad
still
thing.
in the bad things category? Yeah.
In 55, when he does his song, it's not his voice. It's the voice of that person actually singing the song.
I don't think that's true. No, I think that's Michael J. Fox. Did you look it up?
No, but that can't be him.
Yeah, no, that's Michael J. Fox singing.
Really?
Well, okay, I'll look it up and make absolutely certain. Wait, so you thought they just took the radio edit of that song and played it? No, that's not. First of all, even if it's not him, that's not what they did.
Really?
Okay, yeah. No, let me look it up.
Okay. Because it really does not sound like him at all.
I think it does.
Really?
Yeah, I don't really know what you're talking about.
In the first movie?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds the same in both of them.
Well, yeah, but...
Oh, no, you're right.
It's not his voice.
It's someone named Mark Campbell.
Like, there was, like, no way...
Okay, you win. But I think that it's a pretty good sound-alike. I didn't realize it wasn't him.
But it's super weird because that does not sound like Marty at all.
I mean, I think it sounds close enough, but
yeah.
Anyway. All right.
Anyway.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you're right. So
yeah, it just did
it's a
not
fair criticism.
Sound like.
But they didn't just take the song that was on the radio and play it. That's not what happened.
Yeah, it just.
All right. So you want to get to good stuff?
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I already did good stuff.
You just did all the good stuff already?
Yeah.
Okay. What other categories do you have?
Best parts.
Oh yeah, okay. So of each movie. So
of each movie.
What is your absolute favorite moment? We're just gonna do your standard ask your kid what his favorite part was at the end of the movie thing, okay? So what is the best moment in Back to the Future 1?
Well, I have a couple.
Oh, okay.
So
you can cheat?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I like when we first get the time machine, the DeLorean, and then we got Einstein in it. And he goes for the first time.
So just the whole scene of the mall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great.
And then also the scene.
No, the sucker's electrical.
And then at the end of the movie, the scene with the clock tower when he goes.
Yeah.
And
when I was a kid, that was my favorite part too. And when he uses it like a zip line.
Yeah. then he goes like wee, and then he goes like.
Yeah, that's one of the great stunts in that movie.
And then he.
Oh, did you see your hair? You're just like.
And then he and he wakes up, and then he's like yeah, and then he's like, he's like. When Marty comes up in 3.
Oh yeah, just the very end of the movie.
And then he's like,
Yep.
And it's really funny.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you like the part right at the end after he's left.
Well, kind of just that.
You just jumped to another scene, I think.
Well, kind of just that whole part.
Okay.
With like him leaving.
Okay, but that's basically like
also,
that's like the entire climax.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But like, yeah.
I thought we were doing moments.
Yeah, moments.
You just picked like 10 minutes of a movie. Well, it's not a moment.
Well, no, it was like. It was a whole scene.
Scenes
can be
broken up by Marty driving the car.
Right.
Like all that's not in one bit. Like okay,
yeah.
Right. So that's your favorite part in 1. What's your favorite part in 2?
I like Marty playing the arcade machine, and it's like
a baby's toy.
It's like a baby's toy. You mean you have to use it with your hands?
That's your favorite part of 2?
Yeah. And is there another favorite part of 2 that's better than the arcade machine?
Kind
of just
how about
that
hydrated pizza?
Hydrated. Oh yeah, it shrinks and then it, like 10 seconds, it like.
How you like the idea that in the future we watch 20 channels at the same time?
How do you do that?
It's a great question.
I totally forgot about that.
I like the idea that that's where lack of attention span goes. That it isn't that we're constantly flipping channels, it's that we just watch a whole bunch at once.
Yeah.
Just the ultimate attempt at multitasking. And then what's your favorite part in 3? But besides the train, because you talked about that.
Yeah. I remember I had another scene that I didn't put down because I had the train scene.
Is it, hey Joey, let's make some wake up juice?
No.
No, it's not that? Okay.
It's probably it's probably the scene with him.
Is it a Colt Peacemaker?
It's probably the scene with him and Biff, or the kind of Biff person. I forgot what his name was.
Mad Dog Tannen.
Yeah, and where he's like, he was all ready, and then that whole thing with the doc happened, and then also he's gonna go back into the future, and yeah.
I think 3 has some of the cleverest lines of the whole franchise. I like it when Marty says, 8 o'clock. I do my killing after breakfast. That one's really good. I like all the best stuff's made in Japan. Beginning, that was really good. It's a really clever movie. All right. Anything else that you had? You want to make sure that we talked about? We're well past an hour now.
We talked about everything.
We talked about everything?
Everything. Well, not everything, but everything on my notes.
Okay, good. So is this a series that you imagine you'll go back to?
Probably.
Yeah?
Yeah. And then, well, first we have to watch the animated series.
Okay.
We also have to play the Telltale game.
Sure. We can talk about that. It'll be fun. We also, and I don't know how much interest there'll be in more Back to the Future content, but if this is a thing that you want to get more into, there's a little bit of other stuff. We could go through the IDW comics if you want, because I've got all of that. And some of that's really good. Yeah, if you want to read that. I think you'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
And then there's Biff to the Future. Which started off great and then ends horribly, but...
Is that a miniseries?
It's a miniseries. I think it's 6. Thanks everybody for watching. We've had so much fun making this series for you, and I hope you've had a good time watching it. We'll see you again next week. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Jayson.
Later, folks.